Alright, so this video is a follow-up to what we have been doing the last 3 days, what we did Wednesday and Thursday, and then again on Friday. So on Friday, we talked about how to determine if triangles had congruent parts if we weren't explicitly given them. So I'm going to go through an example of what to do if you are not given enough that you can just get the answer. Okay, so here we are. You're given that M is a midpoint of CB and AD. Well, that's it. That's all we're given. Okay, so from that piece of information, I have to look at my triangles and I have to say, okay, what do I know? If I know that M is a midpoint of CB, that means that M is cutting CB in half. So that immediately tells me that CM is congruent to BM. And if M is also a midpoint of AD, that means that AM must be congruent to DM. Now there's one more thing on here that I know has to be congruent, and you should be able to recognize this one as well. It's the vertical angles. We have two vertical angles. So looking at this, I know that I can prove these two triangles are congruent by side angle side. So I'm going to pretend I have my card. Okay, I've got my side angle side, postulate, and I know I have to have a side, an angle, and a side. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do the angle because I know the reasoning behind that. It's going to be angle AMB is congruent to angle DMC. Ran out of room there, but I think you can see it. And we know the reason for this is the vertical angles theorem. And we know that by looking at the picture. Okay, now the two sides. I know that BM is congruent to CM, and I want you to think back to how we knew that. We knew that BM was congruent to CM because we knew what the definition of a midpoint was. We knew that a midpoint cut something in half. So that is our reason for knowing that BM is congruent to CM. The definition of a midpoint. Now, we didn't really get that from the picture, okay? That came from our given. So you could put a G out here. I wouldn't take that against you because we were given that it was a midpoint. And then our other sides that we know are congruent, AM is congruent to DM. And again, we knew that they were congruent because we know what a midpoint is. So this is another definition of a midpoint. And that is what we were given. So we have our three inputs. We have our reasons for those inputs. Now we can safely say that we have proven the two triangles are congruent. We have proven that triangle AMB is congruent to triangle DMC. All right? So if you look at this one, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. We're not going to prove it. We're just going to talk about CD being a perpendicular bisector of AB. If it is a perpendicular bisector, that means that these two angles have to be 90-degree angles because it's perpendicular. And if it's a bisector of AB, that means that AD and DB have to be congruent. Just realized I didn't have a line over AB. All right, and then our last one. All right, on this one, we know that BD bisects angle AD. B, C. So when we know that this angle has to be congruent to this angle. Now, obviously it's not drawn to scale, but you get the idea. You get everything from what is given to you. So you need to do your questions, and then you're good to go for Monday.